Welcome back to my channel. Wendy Renee here. So excited to have you back. We are talking with a really great guy today. His name is Jordan Truppner, and Jordan has such an interesting story. So let's get right into it. Thank you so much for subscribing to our channel. For every subscriber we get, that means one more person is open to hearing the fact that there is positivity on the other side. We also have a great community over there on TikTok, so head on over there, and we have some really great conversations in the comment section as well. Welcome to the channel, Jordan. Really excited to have you here. Tell us your story. What brought you into the religion, and then what was your wake-up moment?
It's kind of historied. I was about 9 or 10 years old. My father got custody of us. He was living with his mother at the time. And so we were living with grandma, who was in the religion, and we would do the My Book of Bible Stories and the Greatest Man book, and I think even the Revelation book. You know, occasional going to meetings with her. And then I think when I was in middle school is when I started to take the truth seriously, was on the path to getting baptized. You know, I would have a few mess ups here and there, and they would put it off. And eventually I had left the truth when I was 18 due to some family issues. And I struggled as a young man. And I felt like, well, I know that if I come back to Jehovah, things will become better. And so I had Googled, this is that story of, I had Googled where the nearest Kingdom Hall was. And the very next day, 2 brothers came and knocked on my door. And I was like, wow, this is a message from Jehovah. This is here. It's the truth. Absolutely. He's answering my prayer. And I got connected with a very respected elder who I studied with through baptism at age 24 and was really, in it for about 5 years, PMO for the last 4 years. And then once COVID really happened is when I just stopped going to meetings, sent an email to the elders to, quit sending me invites to the meeting. And then I think that set off a chain of events where the person I had studied with caught wind of it, or they had contacted him and he was asking me, hey, what's going on? And I was just like, I'm not interested in this anymore. As far as my wake up moment, one of my hobbies is motorcycling and going on long distance tours. Mm-hmm. And I was riding through Utah. And what's great about Utah is I'm kind of a geology nut. Utah is an ancient seabed, and different events throughout Earth's history leave little fingerprints, and you can see, all the layers of sediment buildup. And I thought to myself, well, gosh, if this stuff has been here for this long, the global flood would have left a fingerprint all around the world. And I can't find it. We've got ice age floods up here in my state that left its fingerprint, but we don't have any fingerprint of a global flood. And I was like, well, I don't think I really believe in the Bible anymore, or at least the stories in Genesis. They're kind of out there, having sex with angels and things like that. Right. This, you know what? When you kind of step back and look at it, it's kind of weird.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I find it funny where it's like, hey, Joseph, you know how you and I have never done that thing that married people do? Well, I'm pregnant, and it's God told me, it's God who's talking to me.
Right.
Just think of things like that,
Right. Or the Jephthah's daughter who mourned her virginity for 2.5 months. Mm-hmm. Dude, mm-hmm. she was out throwing it around. Like, come on, right?
Yeah. Okay, so take us back to geology and how that woke you up to the whole religion just not being true, or religion in general.
I mean, I just, was doing a bunch of studies and came to the conclusion that we live in a scientific universe, and events in the Bible would have left something behind, and they're just not there. They're not there at all. We joke about the Mormons, that the Garden of Eden was in Missouri, right? Or something like that.
Right.
And then you look at it and you're like, well, wait a second. There's no evidence of the Hebrews ever being in Egypt or going through the Sinai Peninsula. There's no evidence behind. What we do have evidence of is that the Israelites were just another Canaanite tribe that lived up in the hills. And when the Canaanites disappeared, they inhabited their land. That's what happened.
Mm-hmm.
I just came to the conclusion it's not real. As far as JW doctrine is concerned, I think what I had always questioned was 1914. Like, what, World War I started. Well, so what? That doesn't mean anything. I had no idea that the original 1914 was a prophet, was an end of the world prophecy, not a God's kingdom prophecy. And then that got changed to 1918 and then 1925 and so on and so forth. And it's like, well, they don't teach this in the Kingdom Hall, and then come to find out, well, if you ask Google, hey, Google, when did Israel, and when was Israel destroyed by the Babylonians? It's 587. We teach 607. What is this?
Right.
And, even if you used, there's some great videos out there that kind of show, using these kings and these dates, just using the Bible, it comes to 587. And we, for whatever reason, basically they took that 70-year prophecy and worked backwards and said, you know what? Well, 607. Well, that's some pretty shady math.
Mm-hmm. Shady math. And if they've been corrected several times over the years, they're doubling down on the fact that they're just flat out wrong. And
Right.
if they were to change that doctrine, it would be called New Light. I find it very fascinating about you how, I don't want to say gave yourself permission, but you allowed yourself, even being indoctrinated, to do external research. Can you talk about that? What that was like?
Yeah,
Was there any fear or?
I never liked, I'm a big Redditor, and occasionally I'd see an ExJw post reach the front page of Reddit, and it would always, like, your heart would race, like, I can't look at that. I can't look at that. And I think the more I had mentally was disassociating myself from the truth, the more I was open to hearing other sides of the story. And I had finally, you know what, let me dabble in this ExJw subreddit, and these people are fine. These people are normal. So I think it was that, okay, if I don't believe this is the truth anymore, then there's no harm in looking and kind of seeing what they have to say. And that's where I came across some of Lloyd Evans stuff. Actually found your video with the ex-Kobe, which I found very fascinating. So, and then I was like, you know what? The information's out there. You go out and research it. I remember going to the conventions and seeing the people with, like, paper bags over their heads, with the old school website. Do you remember going to conventions and seeing them there?
You mean apostates?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, of course. We had one at our memorial one time. They stood on the chair after closing prayer, and we started screaming. I don't even know what he screamed, but I remember all of a sudden elders just swarmed this person and he's screaming. It was really dramatic. And I remember thinking, oh my God, these apostates really are nuts. And now I know that's actually the exception. Very few people who leave the organization they're out there, but that's not everybody.
In 10 years, I've never had, what do they call it, like a Kingdom Hall bombing or
we have to crash.
Whatever they call that, storming the Kingdom Hall or whatever.
Yeah, it's extreme, but
yeah,
some people have their ways, I guess. So you're in Utah. I'm fascinated with this. You're in Utah and you're looking at the beauty of the planet before
Sure.
you.
Pretty much.
And what was your thought process in that moment? Did you immediately think of the flood, or was this like, and how long of a time period are we talking that you put this together?
That's a good question. I'm riding my motorcycle and I'm just taking note of, just how beautiful it looks, how long it would have taken for this to have happened. And then I thought, well, the flood would have kind of washed over this ancient stuff because the flood is closer to us than the history of the rocks in Utah, right? It kind of planted the seed of doubt. That's what happened. It planted the seed of doubt and it started to grow. Then I started to research more doctrinal things. I think the last kicker was that really got me like, there's just no way, was the teaching of the generations. Like,
Right?
like the mental gymnastics that you have to do.
They really wanted to stick too.
Oh my God.
Mhm.
Because it still surrounds 1914.
Mhm.
If
Yeah.
you get rid of 1914, everything, it's like Jenga. It's like taking that last piece out. It all collapses.
Mhm. Mhm.
So, you're right. They definitely wanted to stick. And it's like, well, wait a second. If you're going to teach this doctrine, you
Mhm.
basically open it up to say everyone since Jesus is one generation.
Mhm.
Come on.
And so you wrote a letter. You mentioned you reached out and you basically said, "Don't contact me." Have you received any pushback or love
No,
bombings to try and get you back? What's going on there?
so basically, what happened is I wrote a email to the congregation that I was assigned to, saying, "Hey, it's been about a year. I wanted to know if I was still active. What's my status? Am I active? What's going on?" And the elder wrote me a letter back saying, "Hey, me and this brother would like to do a shepherding call." And I wrote them a letter back saying, "Look, no shepherding call. I don't believe this is the truth. I list out my reasons and got no response. But what I did get was a phone call from the guy that I had studied with. So basically, they had taken my email and passed it off to him, and then another close elder that I have a good relationship with, and they're trying to figure out what's going on. And I'm like, look, hey, 1914, it's not true.
Mhm.
It's a made up date, borrowed by Charles Taze Russell from his Adventist days. This 2,520-year teaching, it's borrowed math. He's not the first person, and then it basically just this man-made math, or eschatology is what it's called, trying to use math to determine the end of the world. There's a great video by a channel called Knowing Better, and he does a specific video on eschatology, and that helped me kind of plant another seed in my mind about, well, anybody who uses eschatology to try to predict the end, you can pretty much discredit, and that discredits Charles Taze Russell.
Because if they're using eschatology, where's the Holy Spirit then? Why would they
Right.
even need to do that?
Right.
It's interesting. You just introduced me to this, so thank you for that. And I'm sure our viewers, that's really fascinating. That was never my strong suit, so really thankful to have you talk about this. By the way, so they never really pushed back, and they just said, "Okay, no problem." Or,
I mean, he was like, "Well, there's good reason to believe in 607," and I'm like, "Well, I know you're going to use the Watchtower from, I think it's like 2011. It's a 2-part series. Basically, what they're doing is they're planting doubt in the historical accuracy of the Babylonian cuneiform tablets. As Lloyd Evans says, those guys were history nuts, and they documented everything. It basically, instead of having a date, using dates, they would say, Jupiter, Mars, and the moon are in these positions, and that's how they kept their dates. And we know, based off who was ruling at a certain date, that we know for a fact that Jerusalem was destroyed in 587. Wow. You cannot use 607.
I've heard Peonies, and for our viewers who aren't, a peony is a physically and mentally in. Those are the ones who are 100% believing of the religion. I've heard quite a few when it comes to discussing scholars. They almost discredit these scholars on the one idea that they say, well, these scholars just want to get published. They just want to get their notoriety. So we don't really know if they're even being honest. And I'm thinking, why would they lie about, I mean, this is their profession, right? Have you ever heard that pushback about scholars?
What I've heard is they just pulling out that scripture about man, human knowledge, and I think it's in the book of Psalms, or basically saying what can man know, right? And basically saying, pshaw, this it's what really is, who is man compared to God?
Wow,
like,
what an excellent point. Yes.
right? When I was 24, I got baptized, and for the first 5 years, I had a pretty good publisher record. I ran mics and was going out in service, and I would lead the service meetings. After about 5 years and a few failed relationships, my publisher record started to fall. My hours started to fall off, and I finally was at the point where I was just like, I didn't enjoy going out in service. I didn't enjoy waking people up in the morning on Saturdays and go away and doors slammed in your face. It's just not that it's supposed to be enjoyable, but it was actually discouraging.
Right.
And I can tell other people didn't like it.
And they'll tell you that, sure, it's not normal. They make it a point to address that issue of how people are very uncomfortable going out in service. And then I remember they would say, yes, but you're going out enough to hate it. No, it's just really uncomfortable going to people's doors, trying to get them to come into my religion and being this young woman telling grown adults that they're wrong. And my intent was never to actually teach. Our intent was to recruit. We knew this, but we didn't know this. Do you think that the preaching work got exceedingly difficult for you when you started to hear your mind speak about
absolutely
and about facts to bring them into something that's just incorrect?
I mean, I remember being at the door trying to explain, and this is even before my experience in Utah. I had always doubted the flood. Like it just seems like a tall tale. And I remember being at the door and trying to explain a specific Watchtower article or Wake article about the flood and why there's a good reason. And in my mind, I'm thinking to myself, but I don't even myself believe in this. So you're trying to sell something that, not even yourself really believes in.
Right. That's kind of difficult to do. But when that happens, the indoctrination tells you that you need to do more. You're not doing enough, that your faith is at risk, or you're not being faithful enough. Those are that's what's going on in the inner dialogue.
Right.
How do you counteract those things, or if they even came up?
They would want you to regurgitate information, to have that cycle of belief, right? Part of my discouragement in the religion was my failed relationships with some sisters. So I had there were a few sisters that I was after, and they were elders' daughters. And one of the things that the Jehovah's Witness doctrine, not really doctrine, but more of a cultural thing, is that your elders or your parents or whoever is, you're over you, will reach out to the other person's congregation to see, is this person in good standing? Is this a spiritual person? And it's very controlling. They want to control who you marry, that you stay in the truth. And so, although at some of those times I was still mentally wasn't giving 100%, they would say, Jordan's a great guy, not really super spiritual, avoid, right? And I'd have conversations with the elders like, who are you to tell so-and-so that they shouldn't date me? Well, we're looking after their best interest. It's really in their best interest.
And so that just feeds into the you're not good enough mentality.
Right.
And as a woman, I remember that all the time. I said in my last video that the elders took liberties in pretending like they're my fathers. And it made me feel like it was this subconscious message sent and received that I can't be trusted to make my own decision. And I've said repeatedly that by JW standards, my husband is kind of a loser. He wasn't the guy to reach out for privilege in the congregation. He just wanted to work and raise a family and be a normal dude. That just wasn't enough, because I got warned a lot. So in your experience, did sisters turn you down because you weren't a company man? You were just a normal guy?
No, what's interesting is actually, even though despite them telling a few of these sisters, we carried on a relationship anyways.
Good.
And I would actively try to strengthen my faith. And, I wanted to be a ministerial servant, and I let the elders know that that was my goal. And these sisters that I was after were just so preemie, like, hardcore dedicated, that they, you know what, you're probably better off with a circuit overseer than just a ministerial servant. You know, like that's who I was after.
On
So
behalf of those PME girls, I would like to apologize to good men like you, because we were pretty judgmental. And PME girls who were previously PME girls in the audience, I'm sure you can relate to what I just said. So sorry, you guys. So now, what does life look like for you? You are faded, or what's?
yeah, I'm pretty much faded. I had, you know, I'm actually shocked that email I sent back to those two elders that did not get me a judicial meeting. Because I basically ended the email with, I no longer identify as a witness, and I'm just kind of glad, or I'm disappointed I didn't make this decision sooner. They never took that as a disassociation. Like they
know of. Could you have been
that
to not know it?
I know of. And I mean, that would have gotten you a judicial meeting.
For sure.
I believe so. I haven't gotten anything.
Wow.
I think they basically just referred it back to the two elders I was good friends with to let them try to work it out.
Wow. And did you mention, I'm just curious, did you mention the governing body at all in your letter?
I don't recall.
Okay.
I don't think so.
Because I do know that
word for them.
If you were to say, I don't believe in God anymore, they'd be okay with that. But if you were to say, I don't think the governing body has it right, then you're an apostate.
You don't believe in these 8 men. I always kind of laughed at the 8 men thing, but now that I'm, you know, faded, I laugh about it. It really is controlled by 8 men. And I just, you know, no disrespect to Stephen Lett, but I look at that man and I don't see anyone who's guided by Holy Spirit.
Yeah. Something interesting you mentioned in pre-production that when we were talking about that Serene and historical facts about that, can you speak to that? Because I was really interested. We were talking about how you also are bothered by the charitable non-work that the organization does, and you related it to that as well.
So, I mean, I'll just give a quick shout out. There's a YouTube channel called I think it's called Watchtower History. They have less than 1,000 subscribers. It's 2 gentlemen, and they just have a back and forth. And they did a great exposition on Beth Sarim. And this was during the 20s, I think, or late teens, 20s. Brother Rutherford. So this is a time where basically the society was semi-broke. You know, nobody's working, and Brother Rutherford got a doctor's note for either him or his wife to live in a warmer climate. And so under this guise that King David, Daniel, and all the prophets, that they would be resurrected, that they would need a warm place to live. So they built up this mansion at that time. It's quite an estate for him to live, and he would live there during the winter and fall months. And that was kind of, we're tying that into, you know, how as an organization we aren't very charitable. We build up lots of stuff, but we aren't charitable towards our own people.
I find that really fascinating because they think they are by the ministry alone.
Oh yeah.
I remember feeling
community service.
I remember seeing stories of hurricanes, and I experienced them in the Northeast. And sure, the congregations, I mean, I'm not going to lie, I've been on the receiving end. We lost our home entirely in a flood because we lived on a canal. And sure, the congregation and the neighborhood and the community helped each other out. So I'm not going to discredit the congregation for the amazing help that they provided. There are genuinely good people in this grossly misled organization.
Absolutely.
For sure. But as a whole, the whole being charitable thing, I always ask myself, why is there no going to soup kitchens and helping the homeless? And why was it? Because they believed in, the new system's going to take care of that. But no, these people need to eat today. They need to eat today.
So I actually live a mile and a half from a homeless shelter. I actually it's like living across the railroad tracks. I live in a pretty nice neighborhood, but just a mile and a half down is a homeless shelter. And whenever we'd go out to preach to them, we would hand them a tract, read them a scripture, And that was it. And I'm thinking to myself, these people need
Right.
physical nourishment, clothing, shelter. And yes, Jesus did say we would always have the poor. He also made it a point to feed them when he could.
He fed them before he counseled them. That's what he did. Yeah. And there's nothing in the organization that says you can't do those things, but it's not a priority. It's not
a cultural. Yeah. It's more of a cultural thing that we just don't do that.
So Jordan, based on everything that you've learned and where you're at now, what does a transformation look like for you? The Jordan who was in PME to the Jordan now?
So, I'm really focused on my career. I'm focused on finding a marriage mate, perhaps. I'm focused on improving me. So I'm growing my career. One of my side gigs is I'm a sports official. I referee multiple sports, and I'm trying to use those avenues to get myself to more of a collegiate, go from high school to college. So that's some of the things I'm focused on. Growing my personal wealth. One of the things that we don't, or the witnesses don't teach people, is to prepare for retirement. Like it is you will never grow old in this system of things. So why prepare? Right.
It's interesting you say that. I actually have a financial advisor due to come on the show, and knowing the circumstances, knowing what's gone on and how there are grown adults. And it's hard when you're in your 40s and your 50s. And we have even some people waking up in their 60s and 70s now who have nothing. I just spoke to a woman yesterday who she and her husband devoted their life to Bethel and then to pioneering. And they have the mindset that anytime they have something saved up, that means their spirituality is weakening. And I remember thinking those things. I remember that, like anything that resembles wealth is materialistic, therefore money is evil. And it's just not true. And they've said in articles, that it's not the having of money or the acquisition of money that's the problem. It's the attitude towards it. And I do believe that that's actually true as far as the world spins, But for you, you could never have done sports full time or be involved in sports, even not only just secularly, but also extracurricularly while you're in the organization. So that must feel very freeing for you.
Absolutely. A lot of doors are opening up. I'm trying to explore those avenues. I can see it being scary for people. My wakening up was probably a 3-4 year period, right? People who wake up in a week, in a month, I can see that just being an absolute shock.
Yeah.
And especially people with families. I don't know if you have kids too, be wakening up, and then do I stay in? Do I go out? What are the repercussions of leaving? For me, the only person who's really in it in my family is my father. And I don't take him as the shunning type. We don't really have a great relationship anyways. So I don't think anything would really change there. So I'm kind of in an advantageous position in that respects. One of the things that I'm glad I had before I made that leap out was I had a group of friends that I could rely on once I left, because once I made the decision to leave, my former friends were done. This is it. And it was very hurtful, but I was prepared for it. And I'm glad I had the support system around me to kind of help me through that.
Thank you so much for bringing that up. I think that is something I did something similar. Was I had a community, not knowing that would be the soft place to land. I didn't do it intentionally. It was coincidental that I was waking up while having worldly friends. But I think that's really important as well. And there are people who say, I would never shun you, but it's social pressure. They do. They end up shunning you, whether you're disfellowshipped or disassociated or not. If you are not in line and doing everything that looks like an active witness would do, there is that component there. So thank you for bringing that up. And if you're, to our viewers, if you are watching this secretly under your covers, find a community, find a hobby, find something that you enjoy.
For me, my community right now is the officials that I work with, whether they're umpires, basketball referees, etc., or the friends I ride motorcycles with. I've set up a community around me that loves me for who I am, and you know, and in turn, that has made me more of an open person as well, because I was never anti-LGBT, and hearing some of the brothers throw around, you know, the queer and the F word, it was very hurtful. And I was like, how do you call yourself a witness and throw this word around? And, you know, I being in made me a judgmental person towards that community. And I feel so bad about it.
Me too. A lot of us do, Jordan. A lot of us do.
Because I am such a genuine living person. I could never reconcile what I was believing with what we were experiencing, you know.
Right.
You know, everybody has the right to be respected and loved for who they are, and not for who they love. And, you know, being part of an organization that teaches that, you know, these people, not that they're less than human, because I don't think we teach that, but that they were deserving of death at Armageddon, or that they will be fixed after Armageddon.
Well, you know, they don't teach that the people are repulsive human beings. You're right. But they do use words such as repugnant. They do use such words when referring to that community. So what would someone in that community then conclude?
Right.
That they must be. So you're absolutely right. Right. That there's something wrong with them, that they're broken.
Right.
I agree with you. It never sat well with me. I never under it. It was my experience in the theater as a theater actress. Yeah. And my exposure to my best friends. He's the musical director of one of the shows, and his husband, I could cry just thinking about them, because they really showed me genuine, unconditional love, knowing full well that I was a witness, knowing full well that I was never really giving them my all, and loved me anyway. They taught me what it was like to love someone.
Yeah.
So I'm with you. And so that's interesting. If they're shunning you the way that they're shunning me, they're missing out on the best versions of us as human beings.
Anyone who's really drawn to the witnesses, I want to say that there's great qualities about them. Like, even, you know, inside the religion, remove that veil of being a witness. I think a lot of those people become better people. We learn great traits in the truth, but removed from the truth, you become a better person.
Yeah,
because you lose the bigotry, you lose the xenophobia or the homophobia. You know,
this is what I say in every video. Maybe you've heard me say it. Nothing is all bad or all good. And granted, again, this is not to invalidate the atrocities that so many people have seen within that organization, but we can use those skills, I guess, for lack of better words. We can use them for good. Public speaking. I had exposure to a large population in my congregation. There was a large majority of them were elderly people. So I knew how to speak with and care for the elderly people and use the term elderly. I mean, that's a JW term in my head, but I know what it means. It's respectful.
Right.
So yes, there were some good things to take away from it that now I'm using for the benefit of the people who have been hurt by that organization. It's funny how that happens.
Yeah.
If you could give advice to the other Jordans out there, to the Jordans 5 years ago, if you could help someone who is in your circumstances, what would you say to him?
Investigate your doubts. If you have a doubt, investigate it. What we're taught in the organization is to doubt your doubts, right? Make the truth your own, you know, study the Bible every day. if you have doubts, investigate them, find out why you have those doubts, research those topics, come to the conclusion. I'm not saying there's only one conclusion to come to, but investigate your doubts.
Mm-hmm.
And 9 times out of 10, you'll find out that this isn't the truth.
Beautiful. It's actually interesting you said that there may not be just one conclusion to come to. That's important for a JW to know.
Right.
Because we positioned ourselves as having the authority, as having the answers, as being the authority. And that's not actually true. There's so many different ways to look at any one topic.
Right.
And,
like we said,
I'm like this sponge, like, give me all the books, give me all the gurus, I felt like Belle when she's walking through the library, or Rapunzel when she left the tower, like, oh my God, there's a whole world out there.
As we spoke in pre-production, I said that this isn't the truth. It's a version of truth. There are some teachings that may be correct, right? There is no one truth. I think that's important for people to understand.
I think that's important, and you're right. And it's important because you may find other truths as you're leaving the organization, and then you're trying to marry all these different truths together, and they're not going to make sense. So that can leave one very confused. And I think there's a lot of noise out there. There's a lot of gurus. There's a lot of people who claim to have facts. And so that could be scary. So people then go back to the organization because that's a comfort zone.
I feel like one of the things that make us, we have a predisposition to listening to people and believing them. That's why we came to the organization, because we listened and we believed. And if I had to tell the other Jordans out there, is to trust but verify, right? Maybe always research your guru, because we live in this world of gurus now, where everybody is a snake oil salesman. Research it, don't jump straight into it. That's what I would say.
And it's just like my father says, just because you believe it, it doesn't mean it's true.
Yeah.
He said that to me when I was waking up, and I thought, I don't even know what to do with that. That goes for everything.
I think I want to share with your audience that witnesses aren't bad people. They're just misguided. And most of your audience is going to be ex-JWs anyways, so I think they'll really understand that. But for the non-witnesses, or the never witnesses, as they say, they're not bad people. They're doing what they think is right.
They are. There are mischievous people in that organization, and every organization. I lead with empathy. I remember what it was like being on the inside and feeling compelled to shun people, even though it was contrary to how I believed within myself, my personal moral code. I know what it's like to be conflicted on the inside. And I never want to forget what it was like to be in there. I never want to forget what it was like to be disfellowshipped and deal with a committee, because now I'm able to understand and be that soft spot if somebody wants to actually come out. Leading with hatred and anger, sure, those are very justifiable emotions, but that's not going to help people come out. That's not going to help people wake up.
I think it's great that we have a community of people. I know Lloyd Evans is going to be the 800-pound gorilla, but we've got smaller YouTube channels that are coming out. Your channel, for example, it's doing great things. It's really your channel is more kind of a therapy channel. I feel like it really humanizes people. And so thank you for doing what you're doing. And I'm just so grateful that there's a community of people who are there to fill in the gap.
Jordan, I appreciate that. It's just a resource, to get, when people wake up, it's a scary thing. Where do I go? What do I do? I need someone who can help me now. That's what happens when you're in the thick of it.
Anything I can do to help people kind of come to that conclusion. I just want people to use their eyes and see that we live in a scientific world. We don't live in a world of Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, right? Like we live in a scientific world where people don't turn into pillars of salt, and It just doesn't happen.
It doesn't happen. Jordan, thank you so much for coming on this show. If somebody wanted to contact you and reach out to talk sports or talk science or talk, hey, they saw themselves in your story, where could they contact you?
If I can be a help to anybody who has questions, I have no problem if they want to reach out to me via email. My email is Jordan with an A is sport@gmail.com.
Okay, we'll put that in the description box for those of you who want to reach out to Jordan. And we're going to have him back on the show. Jordan, I really hope you come back and we can talk about science and really cool things that you have researched yourself. In pre-production, Jordan said, hey, I'm just an average Joe, but that's what makes Jordan relatable. We're all just figuring this out as we go along, which proves that we can all come to these conclusions on our own without indoctrination. Jordan, we'll see you next time. Thank you so much for being here.
Wendy, thank you very much for having me. I look forward to coming back.
We'll see you next time.
Bye-bye.